Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever logged onto your computer just to check one quick email, only to find yourself like 30 minutes later deep into a bizarre article about something you never even knew you cared about? Well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating psychology behind that exact behavior, using some groundbreaking research on how we acquire information completely by accident.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the serendipity of news, how incidental discovery works, meeting the super encounters, the power of weird, and finally, designing for discovery. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The serendipity of news. We're living through a fundamental shift in how we consume information, moving away from intentional searching and straight into accidental stumbling. The core research we're looking at today comes from Borchelun Yadamsurin and Sande Ardeliz, and it reveals a massive paradigm shift. Consuming news is increasingly becoming just a byproduct of doing other things online rather than a deliberate, focused choice. Think about it. We used to sit down with a physical morning paper, right? That was an intentional act. But now, thanks to being constantly connected, we're just as likely to learn about a major global event while we're online shopping or checking our group chats. The news literally finds us rather than us finding the news. Academics actually have a very specific name for this. They call it incidental exposure to online news, or ION for short. Basically, this is the memorable experience of accidentally discovering useful or interesting news while you're just going about your digital life doing other things. It's a specific type of what researchers call opportunistic acquisition of information. You aren't applying any clever search strategies. You're just living your life and boom, serendipity strikes. You stumble onto something that grabs your attention entirely by chance. Moving on to Section 2, how incidental discovery works. Let's look under the hood at the psychological mechanics behind these happy accidents. How exactly does our brain process this sudden hijacking of our attention? The information encountering model outlines this brilliant 5-step process that kicks in when we switch from whatever task we're doing to a background interest. Let's walk through it. First up, noticing. You see something relevant to a latent curiosity you have. Second is stopping. You literally hit pause on your original task. Third, examining. You take a second to evaluate this new information. Fourth is capturing. Maybe you bookmark it, save it, or just file it away in your brain for later. And finally, returning. You go right back to that original task you abandoned in step 2. This whole cycle works because of our cognitive flexibility, our ability to juggle a primary task while keeping an eye out for interesting stuff. This whole ION process model is practically a playbook for developers and reporters looking to catch consumers' attention. Think about your email inbox for a second. You go in there expecting a boring, task-oriented environment. But when a fascinating headline suddenly pops up on the periphery of a newsletter, it acts as a stark contrast to that sterile environment, instantly triggering those noticing and stopping phases we just talked about. Section 3. Meet the super encounterers. Because it's really important to note here, we don't all experience this digital serendipity in the exact same way. First, we've got to distinguish between two main types of digital consumers. You have your selectors. These folks are laser-focused on specific content based on their immediate needs. They go online with a mission, and honestly, they don't like being distracted. On the flip side, you have your browsers. Browsers use media to soak up information on a massive, wide range of topics. They're super open to their environment, constantly scanning, and they are highly susceptible to that 5-step serendipity process. But here is where it gets really interesting. At the absolute extreme top end of the browser spectrum, you have the super encounterers. These are individuals with this unique cognitive flexibility that allows them to find useful information absolutely everywhere. They are total masters of opportunistic acquisition. For a super encounter, getting sidetracked isn't just a fun distraction, it's literally becoming their main way of staying informed about the world. Their brains are wired to maintain focus on a primary task while simultaneously running a highly effective background scanner for anything interesting or surprising. Section 4. The power of weird. So, we know the process and we know the types of people. But what kind of content actually triggers someone to stop dead in their tracks and click? It turns out the answer is just weirdness. The research points heavily to weird content acting as a massive cognitive disruptor. When respondents were asked what made them click away from their tasks, they consistently used words like unusual, weird, bizarre, outrageous, and off the wall. Content that completely shatters the usual stream of mundane information acts like a giant speed bump to our digital routines. If you're doing something incredibly boring, like doing your taxes, and you spot a headline about a skateboarding dog, your brain almost can't help but initiate these stopping and examining phases. It is the ultimate pattern interrupt.
Now, you'd probably think people would be annoyed by these constant interruptions, right? But check this out. The data shows that 19 out of 20 people, that is 95% of respondents, feel overwhelmingly positive about being distracted this way. They used words like lucky, exciting, and happy. The research actually links this back to the cognitive psychology work of A.M. Eason, suggesting this positivity is tied straight to neurotransmitters like dopamine. Getting sidetracked by something weird literally makes our brains happy, which in turn makes us much more open to absorbing that new information. The people in the study had some incredible ways of explaining this feeling. One respondent totally nailed this dopamine rush, calling it the thrill of the chase. Just listen to that language. Like, you really discovered a treasure. Because you weren't actively looking for it, finding this bizarre or useful piece of information feels like a serendipitous reward. It feels exclusive. It's like catching a lucky break in the middle of a completely average day. I also love this comparison from another participant. Respondent 12 likened it to the nostalgic joy of flipping through a physical encyclopedia. You know, you'd be looking up one specific thing, and on the way there, you'd get completely distracted and spend 20 minutes reading about Spain instead. The technology has definitely changed. We've traded leather-bound books for email digests and shopping sites, but that fundamental human joy of accidental learning, it remains exactly the same. Section 5. Designing for discovery. So, if we know that this serendipitous behavior is super pleasurable and mechanically predictable, how can digital creators actually use it? Well, if you're building a digital product, you can absolutely engineer the serendipity using a few specific tactics. First, use peripheral side forms. You want to catch the eye from the margins without blocking the main task. Second, craft provocative or really obvious headlines, kind of like the famous styling of the Drudge Report, to trigger that stopping phase. Third, mix up the environments. Embed cross-contextual links. Put news inside e-commerce emails or lifestyle links in business reports. And lastly, because these discoveries are usually for later, always include easy save for later buttons so users can complete that crucial capturing step. And here's the real kicker. Using these strategies can do something incredibly powerful. It can successfully re-engage people who have completely tuned out of traditional depressing mainstream news. Like one respondent pointed out, a lot of people actively avoid the front page because it's just too emotionally heavy. But by presenting information incidentally on the periphery of other activities, you can pierce right through that avoidance. You're delivering information when their defenses are down, leveraging that dopamine hit to actually keep them informed. All right, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to think about your own daily digital habits. We all love to believe we are totally in control of our information diets, acting as these strict selectors. But the reality of the information encountering model proves that's just not the case. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. How much of what you know today was learned completely by accident? And more importantly, as you browse the web tomorrow, who is intentionally designing those happy accidents for you to stumble upon?